I'm Matthew Horninger. I do the YouTube videos for the American Custom Gunmakers Guild. I'm here with Ted Yost, the pistolsmith and gunmaker, and Melissa McMinn, the engraver, both professional ACGG members. We're going to have what I hope is the first of kind of an addition to the YouTube channel for the Guild Foundation YouTube. With just sit down conversations with the gunmakers, with the engravers, with the stock makers, and maybe get to know them a little bit, or in this case, discuss a specific topic that I think comes up and maybe creates some issues or tensions or complications for customers or for gunmakers. And that topic's engraving, prepping engraving, budgeting for engraving, communicating with your engraver, communicating with your, if you're a customer, communicating with the gunmaker and with the engraver, and like what steps need to be done first, and then before the engraver gets it, and then what needs to be done after. So yeah, if you guys want to take it away a little bit with just talk about, a little bit about engraving and I guess what steps, like if a customer has a gun with a gunmaker that they ultimately want to get engraved, where in that process would you recommend like start talking to an engraver?
Well, for me, I'm going to try and get in very broad strokes what kind of engraving the customer is interested in. That way I'll know who to approach at the first. Classic scroll engraving, I might reach out to Brian Powley. Something a little more avant-garde, or something a little more like coloring outside the lines, that's this gal. Her stuff is...
The weird stuff.
Her stuff is just mind-blowing because it's unconventional, yet traditional in a lot of ways. And that's what really drew me to have her work on things that when I was given carte blanche by the customer and they said, it needs to be spectacular. I went to her and said, it needs to be spectacular. I'm not going to tell her what to do. I want to listen to what her ideas are. Her very first idea that came back to me, I was very reluctant to take it because I wanted to see if I asked her to tweak it, how much better it could be. But every time I looked at it, I said, no, it's done. It's absolutely done. And that gun was phenomenal. It was everything I expected. But I think the key to that relationship is communication.
Definitely. That first gun we collaborated on, felt really fortunate to connect with you about it on the styling, and also that you were willing to take, because that was a little bit of a risky finish on your end. It was a selective bead blasted finish, and if one thing went wrong when I sent it back to Ted, as far as a scratch, a scuff, even just a little bit too much burnishing on something, it was kind of a full loss on the finish. It'd have to come back to me and go back through a whole process. So that was a really cool project in that regard, that both of us were willing to kind of give each other leeway and take a few risks on something that could have been pretty complicated if things went wrong. So that was a relationship building project, making sure that came through, and it came through and it looked pretty cool.
It had a high risk reward ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it paid off in spades.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice when that happens.
Yeah.
And relationship's a good word for it. I mean, we use in our shop a number of engravers, and you'll give them a budget and an idea of what you want, and it's really up to them to turn that into engraving on the gun. And I gotta imagine that's like a difficult job sometimes. We try to keep our instructions clear, and but sometimes you're getting stuff from the customer that doesn't always add up, or it's too particular, is too broad, and you're left like sometimes trying to make sense of a bunch of gaps in the information.
That's a very nuanced part of all of our jobs, is kind of honing down on the communication of what someone really wants when maybe they don't know the nuances of each side of the craft, the gun making, the stock making, the engraving,
Yeah.
and kind of sometimes just using photo references or
Yep.
honing down on it, making sure you're on the same page and not miscommunicating with words that one person thinks means something and means
Yeah.
something else to the other one.
Yep.
I think the best thing that you can take from that is, as client, as gunsmith, as engraver, on all three legs of that table, there needs to be somebody who's willing to look at everything on a professional basis, keep the feelings out of it. Somebody's going to say something that tells you your idea is not going to fly. And I know Melissa's got a hard bark on her. I have bounced some things off of her and had them fly right back.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not always so easy for the client.
Yeah.
They have a vision of something. Well, sometimes a simple thing like getting the quote on that is upsetting. Well,
Yeah.
you got to understand what goes into all that.
Yeah.
And explaining where different things are coming from, like
Yeah. Your
gold
dream,
inlay background.
yeah, your dream for this gun might involve not only her extra time on engraving, but maybe my extra time in prepping, polishing far more areas to much higher levels,
Yep.
and then when I get that back, taking all that extra care to re-prep it for final finish, whether it's in-house or whether I have to use someone else, that adds to everything.
Okay.
And time and talent are all we have to sell.
Yep. Yeah.
So, except for Melissa, she's got gold.
Yeah, got lots of gold.
She sells gold.
Yeah, and silver in this.
Yes.
Yes.
In this week. So let's use that to kind of segue into our next topic with all the talking engraving and prep. Our shop, what we like to do, unless otherwise instructed by an engraver, is if we're sending a piece out to an engraver, we want it prepped, ready for metal finish. Meaning, like, if it wasn't getting engraved, we could just blue it that day, or we could case color it that day, or whatever. So I would imagine it's something similar with your shop, Ted.
In many cases, I actually will prep for engraving to a higher level than I prep for simple refinishing, because the flat surfaces that remain after the engraving is cut and the shading and the backgrounding and all those things are done, and that engraving just sparkles. Sometimes that's a little much for the whole surface, but when I get that gun back and I can take those surfaces that I've really high polished and just back them down a bit to where there's now a new texture, a new finish, almost a different shade because of the way they pick up light. It really makes that higher polish under the engraving really pop, and it's a compliment to the engraver's work, but it's difficult on our side because we need to literally mask those areas that have seen the engraver's work and then soften those finishes a little bit. It can be something as simple as the light gray Scotch Brite, or
Yeah.
they could need a light glass bead blast or something.
Yeah.
So again, it's all the risk and reward. It could really make or break a project if you get it wrong. So it's hard from our end, but the rewards are so worth it.
And this is where the communication between the gunsmith and the engraver is really important, because depending on what style of engraving you're doing, like if you're doing something like Bellino, where it's very fine and there's still some finishing left to be done, that's almost a no-go, because you can't touch it after that. So having a good relationship between all the different artisans on the project is critical.
Yeah, yeah, and that even more so if, like, let's say you got the gunmaker, the engraver, and then you have the metal, another shop doing the metal finishing. again, communication,
Yes.
like we keep saying, between all three is so key. you know.
100%.
I don't know if we want to talk about this, but we can get into it a little bit. Budgeting, managing customer expectations with budgets for engraving. I know when I first got into the trade, I had a couple guns. I wanted a bit of engraving done and was kind of staggered at first at the price of engraving. I very quickly learned why, and at no point was I bitter about it. It just, I didn't realize like, oh, this is what
The time
Yeah.
involved.
the time
yeah.
involved and the skill involved demands a certain premium.
Right. Usually education is expensive. In your case, you just paid for the engraving and got the education for free. Some of the rest of us have to learn that the hard way. We don't maybe get that level of engraving the first time, so we're disappointed. And from that perspective, maybe that customer's had that experience, and you need to say, this is why we seek the best.
Yeah.
We seek the best so we're not disappointed. Your expectations, while fully justified, don't need to cause a lot of anxiety for you. It's great to have expectations. Dare me, challenge me. I'm all right with that, and Melissa's all right
Yep.
with that. She says,
You should.
She says, "Give me your fastball, big boy."
Yeah, you want to be challenged a little bit as an artisan and then deliver on it.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling in the world when a client pushes you a little bit, their expectations are up there and you deliver and they're happy. That's a great
absolutely
feeling as
agree.
an artisan.
Yeah. I
So
understand.
whenever you're commissioning engraving, hopefully you've had some direct contact with the engraver or the gunmaker and they're educated on the different techniques involved, the different materials, or the coating in some cases, if there's a lacquer finish on it, what kind of bluing, if there's a selective finish, and how to care for that. Like, I do a lot of selective finish guns, like French gray and blued combos, and those they're fairly stable if you care for them, but I've got one now that needs a little bit of work on it because environmental factors. So you do have to keep some oil on them, some wax, do your best to keep moisture off of them in a temperature controlled environment. But as far as like gold inlays go, 24 karat gold, you're not going to really hurt it unless you ding it because it's so soft. But caring for it's just like caring for the gun. You're going to wipe it down, keep the gunpowder residue off of it, any harsh chemicals, but that's more so to protect the bluing of the gun really than the gold. You're really not going to hurt the
Very
gold.
true.
The carroted gold, so like 18 karat green gold, if I use that, or fine silver, you can start getting a little bit of tarnish on those, though not much. But usually if you keep, again, Renaissance wax, great product for high-end
Yeah, I
guns,
love that
really good product. You can eliminate 99% of your problems by keeping Ren wax on your nice pieces like that.
Okay.
I'm learning that having come from Arizona to Ohio. I'm learning that, as we saw a little earlier today, we look at a frame that's been sitting overnight and it's a little brown in the checkering.
Yeah.
So
Doesn't take long.
It doesn't take long, and it's not catastrophic. It's not life-ending on a gun in progress. But when it happens on something, especially with a very fine engraving, something like Bellino or something like that, there's no fix.
Nope. not
There's
getting
no
it
fix.
out.
It's all pre-care. And once it's out of the engraver's hands, she's going to do the best to let people know how to care for those things. But if you don't pay attention, get ready.
Yeah. So in our shop, we do a lot of restoration work, and on a wide variety of guns. We work mostly on vintage, English, and American doubles. But we also do a number of custom guns every year, which might involve custom engraving. More often than not, though, if we're sending a gun out to an engraver, it's to recut or to cut new again, like in the case of an upgrading a gun. Factory patterns. So just in that world, I know there's a lot of different types of engraving and then different expectations with that. One thing we've struggled with engravers is, and we do whenever we're doing any restoration work, on American guns in particular, the finish quality, the checkering, whatever. Might not be the polishing. Might not be like what I would call ACGG level, but we try to do things like the best day they would have ever had at the factory, right? That's like the bar we set for ourselves if we were restoring.
What would they have done if it were an A1 special?
Yes, exactly. So we try to finish out every gun to that same level. A lot of times in those vintage American guns, the engraving's not always perfect. The borders might have been roll stamped on, and they might not have been, the roll stamp might have been worn on one edge, and they're not always the most even bordering. And we try to, in engravers we've used in the past that aren't real familiar with restoration work, we've kind of tried to convey that to them and set our expectations for what we're looking for. I don't know if you can speak to that sort of thing, or any other kind of difference between like the expectations that might come with a gun that's got a $100,000 price tag, or a gun that's got a $2,000 price tag. I mean, I know in our shop we see a wide variety and range of guns and quality and prices, and the engraving, usually you want it to match that. And
Definitely.
the price point coming from the customer usually matches that as well. So
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at lower price tags on engraved guns, you're probably looking at 1, lower coverage, 2, probably faster cutting, so different patterns that cut really fast, zigzags, kind of the more Western stuff tends to cut fast. Some English scroll cuts fast depending on how detailed. Also, just the overall quality of it. If you're really, really going slow, making sure your design fits, you're not going to get a lot of elbows or flats in your scroll work. That takes time, just takes a little bit more fluid cutting, takes a more skilled engraver, which is probably taking more of the higher end jobs. A lot of the master level engravers, they want to do a certain level of job, meaning the coverage, they want to have some inlay work, they want a statement piece kind of, so they might not grab those, kind of lower level accent type engraving jobs.
yeah,
But I mean, I know, like, I had engraved several out of the box 1911s before Ted and I did our first 1911 together, and those were night and day.
Waffle House guns.
So yeah, the Waffle House. So we went from the Waffle House to Ruth's Chris. So
okay,
part of that is working together, knowing what finish we're at, what finish we're going to end up with, making the design match the flow of the actual gun. One thing that drives me nuts is seeing a really nice gun with what I call the Pep Boys special on it. It's like seeing like a custom Mercury shoebox with a Pep Boys Flame Job sticker kit on it.
yeah,
Ugh. You need to design whatever you're putting on the gun to accent the gun's lines and make it look good, not just slapping a sticker on it like graphic design or something like that. And that takes years of work from an artist, and it also takes whatever the client you're working with and whatever gun maker you're working with vibing together with a certain style. Yeah. If the client doesn't like your style, you should probably pass it to another engraver that works well in that style. Like Chris Rossiter, beautiful English scroll. A lot of times, if someone wants English, I'll tell them to call Chris. We all specialize in different things, so clients should be directed to what's going to get them the best result for what they're going for.
yeah.
And same thing with gun makers. If
Agreed.
if someone wants something that's like a race gun, Ted might not be the guy. Are you the guy?
I'm not the guy.
Not the guy.
No, not the race gun.
I don't race. I don't race. I can barely walk. No, and the reverse is also true in many cases. I know from my perspective, I hate to see a gun sometimes that really lacks the prep, really lacks the finishing. Maybe a gun that's not up to a standard that the engraving on the gun it's exceeded in the appearance of its engraving by so much that it becomes a gun that really doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't connect a lot of dots for me.
Yeah, yeah,
In my view, I think any gun that gets engraved, especially like any gun that gets engraved by a great engraver, needs to be a great effort. It
Yeah.
needs to be the absolute best that you can bring to the table. And after all the communication is done, after all the styles have been decided and the finishes and everything, finish that gun and then look at it hard and say, is there anything I can do better? Chances are there are. And when you're an engraver and you get that gun, take a look at it beforehand, and as I'm sure you do, because I always get your
Yep.
drawings and things.
Yep.
And if there's anywhere on the finish that you think can be better, if there's anywhere that a line could be improved to help your process, communicate back to that gunsmith and say, if you fix this, our effort is going to get a whole lot better for the time you put in to do that.
Yeah. And for engravers that don't have a lot of experience with like a certain platform or a certain grade of gun, it's great to reach out to some of the guild members that do have that experience and start asking questions and getting those things under your belt so that you can level up your side of the work. The first time I worked with Ted, I wasn't really educated on all the nuances of a custom 1911. Most of my work had been a lot of out-of-the-box guns or semi-customs, so it was a wealth of knowledge to be able to talk to Ted about kind of the SOP of a custom gun build to make sure what I was doing was going to jive with all the steps he was doing and we weren't going to run into any bottlenecks.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
One other thing to consider for the gunmaker is sometimes throwing everything at a custom gun and then looking to an engraver is a mistake,
yeah,
because there are things that an engraver does not want to see.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to cut engraving on a concave surface. So
Not impossible though.
Not impossible, but it's very tough. So sometimes the ball cuts at the front of a slide are going to throw a problem that they don't want to deal with
yeah,
because it tightens that concave surface.
Yeah.
Things like French borders. If you want to have any scroll that is going to flow over a line, the last thing you want to do is make a cut through that line.
yeah,
Yeah. I've gotten to a point where if it's got French borders, I probably will deny the project because most of my style overlaps flats to rounds. It's kind of one of the things I enjoy doing, and that's going to throw me completely off. Like someone had a pre-existing gun that's got a French border, I'd tell them to call Ted and get another gun.
yeah, yeah.
Why not? They're cheap.
Well, it all, I mean, like we've been talking about a lot the last 2 days, like composition from beginning to end. I try, I'm a stock maker, but I try as I'm making a stock or before I start making the stock, thinking about the gun from the metal work to the stock work to the engraving to the metal finishing, rather than thinking about those as separate compartments. Thinking about them as a whole.
Yes. Yeah.
With this barreled action in this stock blank, what do we want it, and what does the customer want it to look like finished as an assembled, usable rifle or gun, rather than, just throwing a piece of wood on a gun or throwing some engraving on a barreled action, like using all the elements of it to complement each other and to create like a composition, and we keep coming back to communication,
Right.
Yeah.
it's so important
Yeah.
every step of the way, with the customer, with the engraver, with the gunmaker, with the metalsmith, with the metal finisher. All right.
And having engravers having a fully assembled gun, or at least all the pieces, like the grips on a 1911. If you're doing a really high grade 1911, you want to know what the grips look like? there might be some nuances in the wood that you want to make the engraving flow with. You also want to know exactly where they fit on that frame, because if someone puts a different pair of grips on it and they're covering part of your design, it might throw the whole flow of everything off. So
Yeah.
on the higher grade pieces, that'll, like the communication, but also the physical parts,
Yeah.
making sure that you have everything together to create that whole piece and make sure the customer's satisfied.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys again. This is Ted Yost and Melissa McMinn. I've had a
Yeah.
fabulous
Thank you, Matthew.
2 days hanging out with you guys.
It's been great.
I look forward to getting the videos up and getting everybody's feedback. Thank you.